2022 Lexus RX350 first oil change. This Lexus has a cartridge style oil filter, and to get that oil filter housing off, I bought a Motiv-Tool MX2320 adapter. So hopefully this is going to work well. And I have a Toyota filter element 04152-YZZA1. Now, to get a wrench on this Motiv MX2320, to be able to turn it, you can either take a 3/8 inch ratchet, in this case with an extension, and it'll fit right in there, or what I'm going to do is use a 24mm socket. Fits right on that nut. And on a 2022 Lexus RX350, that oil filter housing is located on the passenger side. There's a passenger side front tire, and the oil filter housing is right there. Now, straight back from the filter housing, which is right here, is the oil pan drain plug, and it is 14mm. So I want to get that plug out and drain the oil before I take the filter housing off. The engine and the oil are hot, so it'll flow out better. But once all the oil drains out, I'll replace the crush washer, and then we'll move on to the filter. All right, you can see we're down to a slow drip, but I want to point one thing out to you. When I took that drain plug out, the crush washer stayed stuck on the oil pan. So you need to watch out for that, because if you don't notice that and you leave that washer on there and you put another washer on this bolt, if you double those washers up, you run the risk of having a leak here. So when you take the drain plug off, make sure that the crush washer comes with it. So now I need to pry this one off. I'm gonna have to pry it off with a screwdriver. There we go. Just watch out for that. You don't want to double these washers up. And now with a new crush washer installed on the drain plug, get that started in by hand so I know it's not cross-threaded. Get that nice and snug. Click. Now we can move on to the filter housing. First thing I want to do is take this silver plug out and then insert this drain that came with the filter. So once that plug's out, I'll push this up in there, and that should drain the oil out of the filter housing. So we'll see how tightly this is on there, because this is the first time it's come off since it was installed by the factory. And that was not too tight. There we go. Just had to push harder. All right, I'll let that drain out for a few minutes. About 5 minutes later, and the oil filter housing is drained out. This wrench should fit right over the housing, and now the 24mm socket. And hopefully this is not on too tightly. And it is not. So having drained this housing, when I get it loose, I'm sure a little bit of oil will leak out, but it shouldn't be too much. That's the whole point of using that little plastic drain plug. And one thing I'm looking out for, because I have two Toyota RAV4s that also has this type of cartridge. I've used a cheaper version of this wrench before, and they've gotten stuck on the oil filter housing. But this one did not get stuck, so that's a good sign. Should be loose enough to get off by hand the rest of the way. And how much oil is going to drain out? Very little. So using that drain plug did help. Not much mess at all. Now we have the filter to replace, and also two O-rings on this oil filter housing. Whatever brand of filter you buy, it should come with a filter element and two O-rings. And this one again is an 04152-YZZA1. This is a genuine Toyota filter. So the new element is going to go right down in here where the old one was. But before we put that filter element in, we want to get this O-ring out, and make sure you pay attention to which groove it's in, which is the last groove, the wider groove. Get a little bit of oil from in the housing, put that on the new O-ring. And put it right back in that same groove that the old one came out of, that last groove, the wider groove right here. You should be able to get that out just with your fingernail, because this housing is made out of plastic, and if you use a screwdriver you could scratch it. Now the second O-ring, the smaller O-ring, this one, that goes on the bottom where we snap this fitting in to drain it out. And in fact the old O-ring got stuck onto that drain adapter, and that was down in here. So that's where we're going to put the new one once we get this cleaned out. Now same thing, gonna get a little oil on my finger, put that on the new O-ring, put it in place, and now this metal piece screws back in. Not gonna tighten it down yet because once I put the filter housing on the car, we're gonna get everything torqued down to the proper specs, and this is gonna be 10 foot-pounds. So that's good for now. This O-ring's in the right place, filter element is in, and this is ready to go back on the car. Before I put that filter housing back in, I wanna make sure everything's nice and clean, so I'm gonna wipe it down. Get it threaded in by hand so I know I'm not cross-threading it. And I'm using a Tecton torque wrench to tighten this down to 18 foot-pounds. Which is right there. And now that comes off easily. That was my biggest fear, like I said before. Now that will cover where the drain adapter snaps in. That gets tightened down to 10 foot-pounds. 10 foot-pounds is not much. Right there. The drain plug on the oil pan gets tightened to 30 foot-pounds. Right there. So we're good underneath. Now we can go back up top and add 5.8 quarts of oil. My 22 RX350 has a 6-cylinder non-turbo engine. The oil capacity is 5.8 quarts and 0.20 is recommended. So that's what I'm using. Haviland 0.20 full synthetic. This 6-quart box was $22 at Walmart. Filter was about $6 also at Walmart. So grand total with tax was about $30 for a full synthetic oil change. Way less than what you'd pay at a dealership. All right, there's just a little bit left in the box. I'm gonna put the filler cap on, crank it up, let it run for a while, and then come back and check the oil level and add some more if needed. Still a little bit low, gotta add some more. Right at the full mark. Now underneath we want to make sure we don't have any leaks. So here's the oil filter housing and it is good, no leaks. Also at the drain plug, no leaks. So underneath we're good. So $29.95 well spent. I'll put a link down below to the Motiv-X tool page where I bought this from earlier. I said it was Motiv-Tools, but there's an X in the middle. So Motiv-X-Tools MX2320. This is advertised to fit the oil filter housing on all Lexus and Toyota vehicles that have the cartridge style filter. Made in USA, lifetime warranty. It looks like this center nut, that 24mm nut, or 15/16 if you're using standard. There's a snap ring holding it in. So I assume that this is replaceable if it gets stripped out. 3/8" ratchet will also fit right there in the center if you want to use it that way to drive it, and much better than the old cheap wrench that I was using earlier, the one I mentioned that would get stuck on the filter housing and then I'd have to pry it off. You can see where the metal's scratched. So that one's going in the trash. This one should last me forever with a lifetime warranty, and $30 well spent. That's it. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching.